Welcome to The Real Life Buyer. Whether you are buying for yourself or your business, here you will find tips, techniques and knowledge to support your journey to buying smart. Interviewing business owners and technical experts to give you information and guidance before parting with your money. Save money, time and get what you want when you want it. Now introducing The Real Life Buyer, Dave Barr.
Hello and welcome to The Real Life Buyer. In this episode, I'm very pleased to introduce you to a former colleague of mine, Phil Hill. I met Phil over 20 years ago, and in my opinion, is an extremely experienced and knowledgeable purchasing professional when looking to source IT hardware, software, and systems for businesses. In this episode, we will be discussing the purchase of IT hardware, and we'll hopefully follow with another podcast at a later date on software and systems. Hello, Phil, and welcome to the show.
Hi, Dave.
Hey, you all good?
Yeah, all good, yes.
On this sunny day. Fantastic. Yeah, very nice to see.
Yeah.
Perhaps you wouldn't mind spending just a few minutes informing the listeners about yourself and your extensive breadth and depth of experience that you built up over your career.
Well, I suppose in terms of purchasing, then I got into purchasing by chance. Started my working life with Boots' shopfitting department. I thought I was joining Boots' shoplifting department, but when I got there, it was the shopfitting department. So that was many, many years ago. We won't go into how far long ago that was. As a new join, I started off as an estimator's assistant. Because I was young, they thought I knew something about computers. And they were introducing new computer systems, and I was asked to get involved, which is a great starting point because basically we were designing systems from scratch. So I was involved in the project of implementing a brand new IT systems into the shop fitting factory. And as a result of that, I was asked to go and work for another department within Boots, which was an IT department where they were introducing common stock rooms. And so I just by chance got into IT. Then Boots acquired a company called Underwoods, a large chemist chain which was primarily down south. And the CEO at the time did it, all rebranded in a very, very challenging timescale. So again, I was asked if I could go and join them because I also had experience of shop fitting, and I had experience of process working in IT. So I was asked to join the team, and basically it was just to set up processes so that we could refit all of the Underwood stores as boot stores. In the meantime, Boots, in their wisdom, had decided to divest the shop fitting factory. So actually, they no longer own their own shop fitting factory. It was a third party relationship.
Okay.
And so at that point in time, it became clear that I was doing sort of like a supply management role and a buying role. And that's how I got into buying by pure chance. I never intended to become a purchaser or a buyer. And so what I ended up doing, I spent a few years just buying all the shop fittings and signage for Boots the Chemist at the time. And again,
Okay.
by chance, again, another restructuring within Boots, they were consolidating all of their IT, and I was asked to go and join the IT department because I had previous experience in IT, and I know I had purchasing experience. I'd done my SIPs, and so I was going to ask to join a team, and which I had ended up after about 12 months leading a small team of people of buyers, and we used to buy all of the IT and telecoms for Boots the Chemist. And that's basically how I got into IT. Into purchasing, sorry.
Yeah, a little bit of both, really. Then, yeah,
yeah.
that's
So it's
quite
pure
yeah.
chance, and it's just one of those things that you just, you go through life, and opportunities arise, and if you take them, it was a great for me because I ended up doing something which I really like and enjoy.
Yes, that's great, and obviously with Boots as well being such a well-known company, that's obviously quite an opportunity, as you say. And you got a
Yeah.
sort of kind of a similar experience to myself because I started in the world of quality, and so my intention wasn't at that time to move into purchasing, but as you say, circumstances change and opportunities arise, and I was given the chance, and and then here we are. I moved out of quality and into purchasing, and I was exactly the same as you. I did all my SIPS exams. For those who don't know, that's the Chartered Institute of Purchasing and Supply, and I carried on. It gives you, well, it certainly gave me lots of opportunities to travel the world as well and see some pretty amazing things, amazing factories, and meet lots of really good people. So, it was a wonderful chance that I'm glad I took. Anyway, I'm not here to talk about me. So I shall swiftly move on. Um, just going back to then, obviously, world of computers. And it's something that I've certainly noticed. It's been a tremendously changing world, and that kind of rate of change in the world of computer hardware technology, I find quite staggering. And with this comes obviously great responsibility to purchase equipment that sort of both meets the needs of the business now, but also for the future growth and demands of a company that you're representing. Just a little experience just recently, I needed to go out and buy a new laptop. And I was taken aback by how rapidly hardware requirements are developed and how they change virtually, not to say week to week, but month to month. So it just was, quite an amazing experience. So how on earth do you maintain your awareness of this developing world so you are prepared to act quickly and proactively when the need arises?
It's a brilliant question, and you're absolutely right. There is constant change. Um, I think if you take a step back, it's actually not just technology, restricted technology. I think all industries are changing quite rapidly. Uh, Manufacturing processes are changing, the materials which are available in manufacturing, and the world is just changing all the time. So I think as a purchaser, you just need to be able to recognize that nothing is constant and just try your best to stay aware of what's going on in your particular marketplace.
Mm,
So I don't think it's restricted to just to IT.
mhm.
How do I maintain awareness? Was the question, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's a good question. I don't have a perfect answer. That's absolutely not something I can actually give you. So if you're asking for the silver bullet,
Yeah,
I don't have that.
yeah, yeah.
What I try to do, I think what's important is that you have to not react to the industry hype. So IT is just really, 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 really good at marketing itself. And you everybody's talking about cloud first, and
Mm,
in the past there's been sort of like computer centric computing, whatever that meant. So there's all these things which are going on. So I think what you need to do as a purchaser is first of understand what at a very basic level what these technologies actually mean. And so if you take cloud first, or cloud technologies, it's basically just a bunch of servers in somebody's data center, which is not on your premises. It's in its purest form. So once you start to understand that, you can start to then compare what the advantages of having somebody else running your compute against you running the compute yourself, and you
mm,
can start modeling um, costs and um, some of the other advantages of doing it. So obviously you don't have to employ so many people to monitor the environments.
mm,
So there are other benefits. So you really need to just really just whatever they're talking about in terms of. I mean, they talk about now is the everybody wants this going digital. What does that mean?
mm,
Um, what it basically means is that what they're trying to say is that all data is accessible anywhere. So basically, it's trying to say that data is key. So therefore, you need to be able to access data anywhere, any place, and get the information to whoever anywhere, any place, which is which is basically what it is. So the word digital doesn't really mean much.
right.
So you just need to understand that. Um, they What often happens is that you find that when new marketing technologies are introduced or new technologies come around, then the suppliers will often change the way that they model the commercial arrangements, normally to their advantage. So at the moment, we're moving away from the traditional perpetual licensing model to more of a software as a service model. So basically, you're buying a subscription. So I know we've communicated via Gmail. Gmail is effectively a subscription service. You just pay them so much a month or so much a year. If you're a business, it's free for obviously
For home use.
your home use, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But basically because and so more and more of those. So then again, you've got to work out, well, what do they cost? I mean, and it's interesting in that some of the examples we've looked at recently in my company is actually if you project the costs over 5 years and you are a company that sweats its assets, then often there is not a commercial case. There's, if you look at the pounds, shillings, and pence at the end of 5 years, you'll find that the subscription services can be significantly more expensive than if you ran the services yourselves.
Mm, mm,
Um, but what you then have to consider is what do they give you that you can't give, that you couldn't invest yourself? So a lot of it is around they build huge data centers, they've got security around them, they've got all they've got levels of security and resilience that you as most companies couldn't afford to invest in. So if
right.
that's important to your business, then subscription models are the right way to go. If it's not so important to your business, then you just need to do the maths and work
Yeah.
out
So it gives you
what
a
is
fair
actually
amount of
going.
peace of mind, I guess, then, that some of the tasks that you would have to
It
take on board yourself, you don't have to do then.
correct, yeah. So they're doing all the monitoring of the systems. They have built so that they're protecting them. They've got their own firewalls. They're doing all the security monitoring. Um, they're just monitoring the actual compute to make sure that there's enough resources there to actually do the workloads.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so there are advantages to it, but again,
Mm,
I think as a purchaser, you just need to not be sold too much on the marketing, but and actually don't go away from the basics. And the basics of purchasing is just using common sense and
mm,
just doing the maths.
yeah.
Then you can do a risk assessment, and then the business can make a judgment as to what's right for it. But if you're thinking of going into it, it's going to be more cost effective, which is what all the marketing material is. Then my experience is that that's not the case.
Okay. That's interesting. So when you have some new requirements that you identify yourself, or perhaps there's a new project in your business and it becomes quite clear that you need to invest in some hardware, what do you see as some of the key process steps and why to take on those projects and move them forward?
Hardware in itself is a fairly straightforward one. So it depends what sort of hardware you're buying, I suppose. If you're buying compute like servers and things like that, you just need to work closely with your IT specialists and make sure that what they're specifying is met by what the supplier is proposing. So we're not over egging the requirements and we're not under egging it. And the other thing with that is you just got to pick the right time. They're all based on quarter ends and year ends, and you can get tremendous deals if you just hit them at the right time. So if you're in a rush to get something, then they will take advantage of that. So it's best
Mm,
to play the long game and try and pick out when they can actually when they actually need your money. So
mm,
and you can get some tremendous deals on that. Not as good as could do many years ago because the margins on tin isn't as what it used to be, but you still can get some good range deals, and you can get extended warranty. They throw those sort of things in. In
mm,
terms of laptops and things, again, the question at the moment is not what laptop you want, but what are they going to use it for? So if you go back to if all they're going to use it for is emails and you've got Office D365 in the cloud, and you've got G Suite in the cloud, and then you've moved your application to the cloud.
mm,
What they need is a browser. They don't need a laptop or a desktop. They just need a device which will give them access to a browser. So therefore, traditionally, you just buy people laptops because they or a desktop because they needed a Windows machine. If
mm,
they only need a web browser, you could buy them a Chromebook or something like that. So the first thing to do is take a step back. What are they actually what are they going to actually use it for? So if they're going to travel a lot, then you might want to buy them something which you pay a little bit more for because they're going to have to carry around this big brick. So
Yeah.
it might be quite nice of them for you to actually buy something which is more suitable, which will fit in their luggage, isn't quite so heavy, it's a bit more robust, so you might want to spend a bit more. If you want to, just somebody working from home who occasionally takes his laptop home,
Mm.
then you just need to buy something which has got sufficient um, power on it, but maybe nothing special. So from a hardware point of view, I don't. Again, it's to me, it's just you just go back to basics. Well, before you buy anything, the first thing is what they're going to use it for.
Yeah.
Because if people say I want a laptop, but when you say to them, well, what are you going to use it for? And they say, well, I need to access my email. Why do you need a laptop then? It's
Right.
because you need a browser. So if I give you a device which has got a browser on it, whoopee, you're good to go. And instead of say paying 600 or 700 quid on a laptop, I can pay 200 quid on a Chromebook, and it'll be just as efficient
Mm.
and
Yeah.
obviously more cost effective.
Yeah. I
I
guess
think the
there's
more difficult, yeah, sorry,
no. So I was going to say, I guess it's a case of two things, isn't it? One is educating your customer so they understand that there are alternatives. Because certainly in the old day, then a laptop was a laptop. What
yeah,
was a browser, basically. And then the second thing, as you say, is to understand what your customer's needs are. And once
yeah,
you've established those two things, and the customer understands the reasons why you're perhaps making some of the choices, then everything becomes a lot easier, I guess.
yeah. I think you've hit the nail on the head there. So the customer will ask for a laptop, but you've got to go beyond that and say what what will you use the laptop for? What is the purpose of it? Once you understand that, then you can give them the right device. So some people may want a laptop and they're just going to be in a static station.
Mm, mm,
So why would they want a laptop? Because laptops are designed to be mobile. If they're never going to be mobile, then why would they want one? So again, it's just basic purchasing stuff. You don't
mm.
when they ask for something, you want to know what are you actually going to do with it,
Yeah, yeah,
and then you can support them and give them the right tool for the job.
yeah. Okay, that's good.
And
Thanks.
that may pay that actually may be that spending a little bit more money, but it's best to make sure that you match what they need, then give them something cheap and it doesn't work, doesn't meet their needs.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah,
so by them asking for a laptop, you could get them a really cheap one and it won't do what they want because it may be that they're running huge Excel spreadsheets on there, and they need at least an i7 processor and so many 8 gig of RAM and stuff like that. And you give them a little laptop which has got like an i3 processor and a couple of gig of RAM, and it works like a dog for them. But by asking them, well, what are you going to use it for?
yeah,
Then you can match the requirement for them. So you make
yeah,
sure that you get a good you get you're paying what you need to pay, but it's also matching
yeah,
the customer requirement.
yeah. Asking the right question at the right time. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, let's move on to a little bit different on about tenders. So when it comes to the initial selection of vendors for a tender, what are some of your primary considerations?
I don't do anything rocket science. It's a very straightforward. So I would normally research the marketplace. So basically, when we research the marketplace, my colleagues might know companies they've come across. Companies may have approached me. In IT, there's lots of independent analysts you can go to who've already done research on particular aspects. So you end up with often quite a large number of potential suppliers who could potentially provide a solution for you. So what I tend to do, I use a PQQ, like it's a pre-qualification questionnaire.
Yeah,
So before we go out to giving them lots of information, just broadly go out and just describe in maybe 1 or 2 pages and ask for them so there's 1 or 2 pages of questions for them to answer. And then from that, you glean enough information, obviously, to then filter it down. So you've got slightly less companies. So you can start to focus on the companies who are probably going to be the ones that you will give you the solution that you want. And then you'd invite a number of those to actually go into an RFP or an RFI.
okay.
But what I normally do is more and more is with IT, especially on software, it's more to do with you don't have a specification because the business knows it needs to do something, so it doesn't know the art of the possible, and it's hard to articulate exactly what it wants it to do. So what we tend to do is try to get the business to describe their problems. So there's loads of techniques you can use. One we've used recently, which works really well. So it's like pains and gains. So we ask them to describe in a day-to-day work and what they do, what are the things which cause them pain, which are the things which really frustrate them, really, really get on their nerves, and they just want them to be solved.
Mm.
And what are the things which they think in the future, or which maybe make a big difference to them? So it's other things which they think would improve the way they work. And so we tend to do it that way. And then what we ask the suppliers to do is to capture all of those. We often, certainly over the last 4 or 5 years, what we've tended to do is we do a initial document out to which they have to respond to, which basically tries to make sure that they cover the base functionality that we're looking for. And then we invite them in, often on the same day, so all the suppliers turn up on the same day. And then we have like a round robin, and they go around people within the business, and they've got an opportunity to spend an hour with 3 or 4 areas of the business, however many want, and they've got a chance to talk to them, understand them, know what their problems they have. And then the expectation is, which is said to them quite clearly, when they come to present their final proposal to the team, that if they come and present their standard marketing presentation, then that way we will just dismiss them out of hand. We expect to see in their presentation how their solution would resolve the problems that they've heard from the team who are going to actually be using it.
Yeah.
And we found that to be really much more successful in terms of you end up with selecting a solution. Sorry, you end up with seeing lots of solutions which can't resolve all your problems, but you end up with a clarity on you picking the one which does most of what you want, but you also understand the things it can't do. So you're going into it with your eyes open.
Right.
And that works really well. Some of the suppliers got a bit edgy when they all turn up on the same day, but then you find they all know each other. It's quite incestuous.
Oh, of course,
In the
yeah,
IT industry.
absolutely. Yeah.
But the feedback we've had using that process has been generally very, very positive from the suppliers, because they get a chance to actually hear from the people who are going to be users in the solution,
Right.
what they actually need. So that's
Right.
but again, it's not rocket science stuff. It's all it's doing is all you're doing is you're just trying to give the supplier sufficient information that they can show you and demonstrate to you that whatever they're proposing will meet that requirement.
Yeah.
And I think doing it that way, you can only do so much on the written document in terms of describing something. To actually hear people talk about their problems and the way it affects their day-to-day working life, it's hard to capture that in the written word. So yes, it's been really positive, and we've made some touch wood so far. All the ones we've used over the last, it must be 5 or 6 years now. Then we've not had any. All the selections we've made, we've not had any problems with the suppliers. In fact, they've all been successful projects so far. So that's been quite good.
Good, yeah. I said, how would have interest then from a user's perspective? Did they at first perhaps find it a bit daunting that you had all these bunch of technical persons come in to chat to them? Did you have to educate them?
You always get into the detail, David. So yeah, so what we do is, all right, so we don't just throw them in the blindly. We're lucky because I've got access to business analysts, and so
Right.
what we do is we send the business analysts out to the people who are going to be part of the briefing days, and they talk them through the process, and then they talk them through helping them capture their pains and gains. So they've got in their mindsets, they're starting to frame the sort of, so we don't just throw them in there with a supplier and say talk about your problems, we give them an opportunity
A nice
to,
soft couch.
yeah. So we give them an opportunity really to prep them so that they, in their mindsets,
Yeah.
they know what sort of what they should be getting across to the suppliers. But it's in the it has to be in their own words.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, so yes, I missed that bit out, but yeah, so we don't just throw people in.
Yeah.
They go in. They've already been through a process where they've had to think through what are the problems, and then the BAs capture those on post-it notes or something like that, so that
Right.
they've got something. And in fact, on a couple of them, we've actually, once we've done that exercise, and we've captured on post-it notes is pains, gains, and something else. I can't remember what the third thing is.
Mm.
And then we've shared all of that information with the suppliers before they come to the briefing days. So again, we're giving the suppliers very little wiggle room in not understanding the problems of the
Yes.
business,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
solution that they need to come up with.
Oh, that's good.
But it's not rocket science.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just finding techniques to give the suppliers the best opportunity to show
Yeah.
you that their solution can meet your
Yeah.
requirement.
I think this is the difference I'm hearing now is that you're also enabling your own users to develop and fully articulate what it is they are looking for as well.
Yeah.
I think that's great. You see, you've got the preparation, they've got the chance to think about what they really want and how they want to put it across. And I think that's only just a very positive aspect of improving the quality of communication between the both parties. So I think
Yeah,
that's makes it a little bit more. Yeah,
and involve. You're right. You're absolutely spot on, because it's important that they own it at the end of the day, so that you can't go and what we shouldn't be doing as a purchasing team is going out and buying something for somebody. We They need to be involved in the process, because they're going to be the ones who are using it. So the more buy-in you can get from their involvement,
yeah,
the more likelihood you're going to have a successful outcome.
yeah.
So the other bit which I didn't mention, which is a side effect of this, is that you will get people go to the briefing days, suppliers who can dismiss straight out hand. But they're not. You can just tell that they don't ask the right questions. They've not done their research,
Mm,
and they're obviously not somebody who you'd want to work with. So you get that as a side, because you get because you're asking them to actually them to work for you in terms of doing this data collection, this information collection.
yeah.
You get an insight on the company. So I said on one occasion we dismissed one of the companies just based on their performance on
Mm,
the briefing day,
right.
because they didn't ask. They just
Yeah, they
the,
weren't
the
fully
feedback was
engaged.
we couldn't work with that company because they
Mm,
didn't they asked stupid questions, or didn't ask very good questions. They weren't prepared. They hadn't done their research.
mm, mm.
Um, but again, that's a positive, because again you don't
Yeah,
want to be working. You want to engage in a company which you're not going to be able to work with.
yeah, yeah. And you obviously want everybody fully on board and communicating well.
Yeah.
You certainly don't want any issues arising that are unforeseen, basically. But so that's really good from a perspective of um, a user, day-to-day user, perhaps we could say. If it's a large hardware project where there is perhaps a more significant impact on the business, is there any other methods or resources or techniques you use for a bigger scale project than what you just mentioned, for example?
Well, again, I suppose the examples which I can think of is where we've done a large scale thing. Then again, most of it's involvement. So we do lots of proof of concepts. So
Yeah,
rather than commit to a big expenditure, the first thing we get involved with suppliers and say we want to prove that this works. And the only way you can do that. So if you are doing something like right, retail stores have recently had a solution. So the first thing we did was we got the people from the business involved um, in the actual selection process to talk to the suppliers. So we put a document together explaining what we're trying to achieve. They talked to suppliers, but then we did a proof of concept. So the suppliers then had to provide something, which we then used for a period of time. It was tweaked, to be fair, but then we ended up agreeing what the final solution would be and rolling that out.
mm,
In that way, then the business users have actually made a decision about. We've got people from the business deciding that is the right solution for them, rather than,
yeah,
certainly from my point of view, there's no point in IT or me saying this is what you need and therefore get on with it. You
yeah,
need them to, by having involving the business, they've actually selected it, and and also they come up with ideas and considerations that, because you know I don't we don't work in most areas of the business. We might have touch points within there, but it's them day to day who've got to work with it. So
Yeah, yeah,
they'll give you more information, and doing a proof of
mm,
concept is really good because they get their hands on, they get to
yeah,
use it, and they can give you instant feedback. Gives the supplier opportunity to do any tweaks, or
mm,
if it doesn't work, then okay, move on
yeah,
and go
yeah,
and find something else.
yeah. So you get quite a bit of innovation probably coming out of those sessions, and it might be fair to say that you get more ownership by the people that are part of the
I think
decision-making process.
I think that's the key. At all stages, um, I suppose from my own experience, many years ago, and that one the reason why I got into IT procurement was Boots had a procurement department at the time, and it was just seen as an ivory tower. So it wasn't. It just people. There were people were making decisions that were remote from the actual parts of the business they were making decisions for. So what Boots did at the time, divested the procurement teams into the business areas which they represented, which we needed representation for purchasing. And so it brought purchasing much closer to the business users. And I think that's a really good thing to do because,
Hmm.
like I was saying before, I don't know, you know, I don't know. And if I go into one of our retail stores, I can see what they do, sort of thing. They sell stuff, talk to customers. I don't really know what their problems are. I'm not doing that job on a day-to-day basis.
Mm, mm,
So I need their involvement. I need them to be involved so they can talk to me about what is it they actually are their problems are.
mhm.
I can facilitate that, um, but it's absolutely key that the business is involved. And if you got them involved, then they'll take on ownership. If you just give them something, they'll often either not use it or complain that it's not quite what they wanted. But
Yeah,
if you've
yeah,
got them involved,
mm,
then they'll make the most of the solution.
absolutely. And then there'll be the guys who are obviously testing the solutions as well and coming up with
Absolutely, yeah,
probably improvements and some really good feedback you'll get for both yourself for future projects and for the supplier that's working on that project, I guess.
yeah. But
Yeah,
I don't. Again, that's not rocket science. It's just common sense, really. That
yeah,
you know,
mm,
you've just got to make sure that the people who are going to be using it, what you're buying for, are
mm,
going to be happy with it. And
yeah,
what
yeah,
do you do to do that? Well, talk to them, get them involved. It's
yeah,
not, it's there's nothing magical about it. There's no magic wand you can wave and say that's the right
yeah, yeah.
solution. You
So you
just
could
got to
say, yeah, sorry.
go.
I was just thinking, so if you think of some top tips, then you got some key points coming out here is obviously engagement for both your users as well as the suppliers. You're acting as a facilitator in some respects, um, and you're perhaps using other means to record some of the essential things that are being developed out of those engagements. Then, like you say about your post-it notes, it's a simple solution, but you're capturing everything. So just thinking about tenders that you may put out for quote. This is some really good tips and considerations I think that people should have when they're going about this type of procurement. I mean,
Yeah, I think the difference with in some procurement, if you're buying widgets and you know exactly what the specification of the widget is, then you can just tender those. I mean, it's just straightforward. But
yeah,
often with IT, you're looking for solutions.
yeah,
So you've got a problem. You can't specify what the solution is because you don't have the skills or the ability to do that as an
mm,
organization. Otherwise, you would do it. So
yeah,
you go out to the marketplace where those skills exist. So you're asking them to solve a problem, not necessarily respond to a absolute specification.
yeah.
So you've just got to find ways of making sure that as a business you can articulate that to them as best you can.
Mm, sounds really good. Yeah, interesting. So when it comes to the offers, how do you go about deciding what's a best value offer? Are there any specific systems or assessment criteria you use to work that out?
Well, obviously, if you're going into an exercise, then you've got a view of the marketplace anyhow, because you've got all these suppliers giving you their pricing.
Hmm.
Um, and so you've got a view of where you are. So there's some negotiation that you can do with the ones that you would prefer to go with, based on the insight that the others have given you in terms of where the market pricing is. Um, and then it's just a matter of just using standard um, techniques. You need to understand your business. So, does as a business, do you want to spend a lot of money up front, or would you like to have spread? So, but that's more making sure that you're engaged with the finance teams to make sure that how all organizations will change. I mean, I've been lucky in my career. Both times I've been worked for cash rich companies. So I've never worked for a company which doesn't have cash to spend. So,
Hmm.
but if you don't have cash to spend, then you may want to go look at the lease arrangements or spreading costs or whatever.
Hmm.
But you just need to be aware of um, how how the company would like the money to be spread out, and then you can start negotiating on that, and then you can look for additional discounts. You can just push them, um, but just using standard techniques, because you've got a view of the marketplace. You know roughly where it should be.
Yeah.
You normally just would push them a little bit more. So if you could do this,
Mm.
then you would get the business, and they'll come back to you and say, "Well, we can't go that far. We can go this far." So, but again, that's just standard negotiation.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's But you're then armed with. You're not asking stupid questions. You're not saying to them, "Oh, you need to reduce your prices by 50%." Where in reality, there's just no way they're ever going to be able to do that.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but
There's a
if you can
key.
see that compared to some of the others, they're probably at 20% out. You can go
Mm.
in and say, "Look, if you can get this 30%,
Right.
then So because you're not going wildly out,
Yeah.
you're because otherwise you could lose credibility as a purchaser.
Mm.
So you just got to you know, come
Yeah.
in and say, look, realistically, you can do this, and also you can, if we're going to pay a lot more up front, then I would expect bigger discounts, and if we're going to spread it out and stuff like that. So
Yeah. Yeah. So knowing your market is, I think, one of the messages coming out of this is quite important. So you can pitch where you think things should be. Then the results of your tender are coming back in, and that will validate whether you're in the right areas or not. And
yeah.
then you can make,
So
as you
so
say,
there, I suppose that there is one other thing which I suppose just thinking about it, which is if you are certainly going in for a new service like a SaaS service or something,
mm,
and especially if it's some sort of system which you're likely it's going to be difficult to displace, then when you engage with them, you've got to make sure that you cap future price rises and take advantage of them as much as possible, because some of our systems we buy, we're not going to replace them every year or every 5 years. It might be 10 years before we replace them. So they've got a long-term revenue stream from you. Um, so at that point in time, you need to be as aggressive as possible on um, just trying to drive their price down and not making sure that you try and lock out any possibility of them doing increases during in the future.
mm, mm.
Um,
Okay. Think about some of the less exciting stuff. Contracts.
yeah,
Um,
contracts.
something we all love to read, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just interested from an IT hardware perspective. It's not something I have to read on a regular basis, and I'm glad you have the joy of doing that. But are there certain important clauses you like to suggest or say more important than others? What do you think are the ones to tease out and say, well, actually, be cautious in these areas more than others, or something?
I think they're all again, it's all relative to the scale of the expenditure and the risk involved. Um, so you're looking for, like, obviously warranties is one thing. At the moment, one of the key things that we have to look for is indemnities and confidentiality. Company, obviously, we've got a lot of intellectual property, and the actual, if that was leaked or there were through the third party, it could cause us considerable damage. So where we've got working with a supplier where there's a danger of that, then they are high up on the scale. So what we tend to have is and this is not me, our legal department, we work with the legal department, they've come up with like a scale system. So
Mm-hmm.
based on the nature of the procurement, then they scale it like 1 to 5. When it gets to a 5, then we would engage with the FD or even the CEO, saying, look, this, the business wants this, but this is a risk. The supplier won't move on it, or then before we would even um, move to signature on those agreements.
Mm.
But it's if you're spending a few £100 on something, then and it's something which has got no personal data in it. It's something that even if it went wrong tomorrow, wouldn't stop the business running. It would just be a little bit of an inconvenience. Then the waiting of the warranties, you could spend a lot of time negotiating something and achieve very little.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas some of them you have to really be diligent and make sure that oh, there'll be occasions where you just say, I can't do a deal with you because
Mm-hmm.
it's so important to us that we have sufficient cover in indemnities or the confidentiality, and it needs to be much
Yeah.
tighter than what you actually said, and
Mm.
what you're warranting that it'll do. It needs to be really, really tight.
Yeah.
But I'm lucky that we've got in-house lawyers, so they support me on that as well. So we work
Yeah.
together
Yeah.
on that, Ray.
Okay. You say NDA is a pretty well common practice then for yourselves.
Yeah, we would normally, normal practice is before we do anything, we would get them to sign an NDA.
Yeah. Perfect.
So before they give us any information at all, or we give them information, we would just sign an NDA. Some of them are a bit, some larger companies, I think because they've got their in-house lawyers teams, they always make some tweak to it. But we basically, our legal team know what they are, so they know how to respond. So we can turn those around pretty quickly. But yeah, before we do anything, first thing we do when we engage with a supplier is get them to sign an NDA before we give them any information.
Yeah. Good practice. Excellent. Glad to hear that. Okay. Okay. Let's come back to a bit more of the people side. How important do you feel the role of the salesman is when selecting a hardware supplier? We've talked about the engagement, so it comes across as people are quite an important factor, or is it more about the equipment in some respects that's more important? What's your feelings about that?
Again, there's no one answer because it depends on what you're buying. So if you're buying a commodity item, you can just buy it off a number of suppliers. Then focus on price, make sure that the terms and conditions are okay. Where you've got something where it's a service, then the way I see it is that it's important that you have an advocate within their organization. That's normally the account manager. Um, so when you're doing the initial purchase, you need to meet the team who are going to support you ongoing. And you need to be confident that they are going to be people you can work with. So where we've got good supplier relationships, basically the account manager is basically acting as our advocate within their organization. They know, they know who within their organization, if there's a problem, who to go to, how to get it resolved, where to apply the pressure. And at the end of the day, you will get problems. And often the merit of a supplier is how well they respond to it,
Mm.
not the fact that you don't have a problem, because that's not the real world. You always get problems. So you're looking for them to set up a team and work. You want to work with people where you've got people who are looking after your interest within their own organisation, which is a bit perverse. But vice versa, you're doing the same. So in procurement, when there's a problem which is caused by your own organisation, they should be able to come to you, and you as a procurement person should know where to go to actually get the true facts on that.
Mm.
Because and then find a resolution, because sometimes it's not always the supplier that's wrong. Sometimes it's your organization not doing things quite the way we should be doing them. So
Okay.
but you have to act as the intermediary in that instance
Mm.
and
Yeah.
be the honest broker, because there's no point criticizing a supplier for something they haven't done
Mm-hmm.
when it's actually your own fault. So you're best to fix what's the problem within your own organization than blame somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. So it sort of leads a little bit to me about behaviors. I look for certain behaviors when I'm dealing with a supplier. It gives me a positive outcome. So, are there certain behaviors you look for when you're seeking to engage with a supplier or during the process of working on a large project?
Um, I suppose the standard ones are the honesty and humility uh, come out quite strongly. So if they're dishonest with you or they say something and then they don't stand by it, then that's a big cross for me.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and the humility is that when they make a mistake, they don't hide it. They come to you. I'd rather have a supplier say, "Look, we screwed this up. I thought I'd let you know now before it gets out, and this is what we're going to do about it."
Yeah.
So I'm looking for characteristics like that. So if I don't have that relationship with the account manager, then I would normally just go to the someone else within that organization and just say we need somebody else because I can't work with somebody who isn't being honest or with me or has the humility to tell me that something isn't
Mm-hmm.
working the way it should do. Even if they come to me, which they do find really difficult to say, we've got a problem with one of your team. They're not, they're not
Mm-hmm.
behaving as they should do.
Yeah. It's can be
It's
quite
important,
difficult. Mm-hmm.
because you hit the day again. You said earlier on, it's all about people. It's all about communication. It's all about talking to each other. It's conversations. Um, and we're all different, but you can't have a situation where even if someone in your organization is disrupting the relationship, it's not on. So you need to deal with it. The only way you can deal with it is to know about it.
Yeah.
And suppliers are often not keen on telling you that you've got a problem within your own organization because
Yeah.
they see that as I don't know. Sometimes they just seems reluctant to tell you. Well, I'd rather
Yeah.
they just tell me and
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
can talk
Well,
about it.
nobody wants to upset the customer, so I can kind of get
Yeah,
that. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And you can't have this. The customer's always right because we're not always right. There's sometimes, and I think that's in procurement. That's I think as a buyer, you just got to be recognize that. You just got to recognize it is people at the end of the day, and things will go wrong.
Mm.
And the metal of a supplier and the relationship is how well that's responded to.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. We touched on it a little bit earlier on integration, and I guess plugging and playing these days is perhaps a little bit more common. But when you're putting in significant hardware, there must be, or I assume there's some way of trying to ensure that things will go seamlessly. Um, is there any particular ways that you can hopefully minimize the risk of hardware incompatibility or something?
Um, Fundamentally, you just got to work with your the technical teams within your own organization, or you'd have to contract with somebody who knows that side of things. So
Mm,
integration of hardware, you've always got the challenge that obviously the operating systems are constantly being upgraded, so you'll end up with an application which no longer works on Windows 10 because it was designed to work on Windows 7 or something like that, or
mm,
um, so you've always got the issue where you've got legacy systems that are a challenge, but often that they can be overcome by either doing upgrades or um, doing workarounds. Your IT team should be able to come up with solutions. You can work with them on that. The more difficulty is when you're introducing systems where you want legacy systems to talk to each other. That becomes much more of a challenge.
mm.
And there's loads of different technologies they use. So you can put service buses in place, which is basically and a bit of, you can put middleware in place, which sort of like does the talking between systems. It's quite costly and quite hard to develop, but it does get around the problem. Means that you can have a legacy system talking to one of the new systems, or else at the moment the way they're going at the moment is moving down towards microservices where they're breaking everything down into smaller chunks, and so you don't make big change, you make small changes but keep them isolated, and then you put like a layer in between those. There are way around it, but I'm not an expert in that, so I would rely heavily on my IT experts
Yeah.
to work with
Yeah.
them.
So it's again a clear requirement for you is to work very closely with specific teams. We mentioned obviously IT's obviously a prerequisite for your role, but you've also mentioned finance and you've mentioned the
Yeah.
end users. So I'm seeing and hearing lots of communication going on, which I find very encouraging. It's the only way to go, in my opinion. But excellent. Okay. I think we touched a little bit earlier on about warranties as well. I'm assuming that obviously small equipment would just be on a standard 12-month warranty, but is there anything that suggests that you can get much longer warranties for more expensive pieces of equipment?
Yeah, you can do. Yeah, you can. And again, probably sound like a broken record. It all depends on the situation.
Yeah,
So, if you're buying something which is maybe, if you look at printers at the moment, so you know, you pay, you'll pay extra for a warranty maybe, and but if it costs like, it breaks every 3 years and it costs you 50 quid to buy the thing in the first place, is it? And you want to, there are, the warranty uplift is 20 quid a year. Then 3 years, you just throw it away and buy a new
yeah,
one
not
because
worth it. Yeah.
it's so there is that side of things.
Mm,
And then in terms of the warranties, you can get extended warranties. There's normally a fee for them. So what we tend to do, the way around that is you can go if you want. Again, it's the service level you want. So if you want it fixed within an hour, a day,
yeah.
2 days, a week. So depending on what warranty you want is, and the warranty will be based on, well, what is the fix for that? So if you want something fixed immediately, that's going to cost you a lot more than it maybe if it's next day, or they can send you a replacement part. So you just need to work through what is the best option for your business. So in one of our warehouses we just put in, we've got basically um, pick stations. We basically have a row of 3 or 4 pick stations just sitting waiting. So if there's a fault with them, we just take the whole bloody thing out and put the whole new kit in, and so operationally wise they keep going. But it
Mm,
means that we can have like 2 or 3 day warranty of fix on the if anything goes wrong. So we don't interrupt the operation at all. We pay a lot less because we're not asking for a short term fix. Some of those items we might not even get them fixed because they're cheap, and we might just get them replace them with a new one. Where it's under warranty and we want it fixed, the manufacturer's got time to come in, either send us a replacement or come and fix it. So there's no, I think warranties, you've got to think more about what is the service you want from that warranty, what is the response that you want when you want to use that warranty. Because the shorter the time that you want to actually have a response to, the more you'll pay. So you just need to say, well, as a operationally, what's what's the optimum for us? And some of that might be
mm,
holding spares, or like I
yeah.
say, that so it's not straightforward in terms of just looking at the
Mm,
warranty. It's what are you actually what does the business actually need?
yeah.
Um, if it needs something straight away, with all in the world, the warranty is not going to do you any good. So you've got to have something
Yeah. No, that's
to
right.
fix it.
Yeah.
If
Guess
or if they can wait a day,
yeah.
then
Yeah.
warranty and only a day, then you can have something shipped out, shipped immediately to you as a replacement, and then the other part is sent off. So if you think about uh, our Hapticom thing, remember were they there? Yeah, digital design. So we do digital design, so they have Hapticom, so which are really important because if you haven't got one of those, you can't do your design. So we have a few spare, but and what happens if they break, if they go wrong, we just replace them immediately, so the designers can carry on with their work. And then I think it's a 5-day turnaround.
Mm,
But we've always got, so all they're doing is just replacing the spares, and that reduced the warranty that we were paying considerably because we've
mm,
sold much. Initially, we had like a next day fix, and for them to do that, they had to own lots of more spares, and they had to, and so they were charging us for the additional service they had to provide.
right.
Um,
Yeah. I guess it's a case of almost doing like a risk analysis and cost analysis of failure. So if something goes wrong, how does it impact the business? What's the cost of that to
yeah,
the business? And therefore, what are you prepared to pay to get it resolved?
yeah, and
Yeah.
what's practical as well, because if
Yeah.
if they need something, if you've got a picking operation and a bit of equipment fails, and you'll lose a picker, and that means you can't meet the customer's
Yeah.
SLA with the customer, then that's really important. So
Mm,
you know if it breaks, it breaks. So you've got to replace it with something. So you
Yeah.
either replace it immediately with something you got standing on
Hmm.
site, or else you wait a day, or you wait a week. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. You can whatever's appropriate for your operation.
Yeah.
Because if you ask the business, they'll always say, "Oh, we want it straight away," and then you say, "Well, But again, it's all about that conversation, isn't it? It's all saying, "Well, what would you do in that situation? What will the impact be? Will it stop you doing what? Will it bring the whole company to its knees?"
Mm.
So you'll get situations where say, "No, it's just inconvenience." Oh, okay, so as an inconvenience, how long would you practice? Oh, we could live with that for a couple of days, really, 3 days or a week. Oh, okay. You should have that conversation with the business. It's talking to people saying, well, okay. So if we gave you this and we can guarantee that's what's going to happen, we put a process in place, so we'd be happy. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
again, we're going back to the thing. It's a lot like it's not rocket science. You just talk to people and say,
Yeah.
dig a bit deeper and find out as a business what is it they're trying to do? What is their problem they're trying to resolve, and what is the impact of things on them? And once you understand that, then you can normally put something in
Yeah.
place.
Yeah. Let's think about a positive experience then. I know we're getting very close to our time, and we've all got things to do. I think there's a gin and tonic waiting for me somewhere, hopefully. Um,
Me too.
so,
Yeah, I hope so as well.
so looking on the bright side, I'm sure you've been in. Obviously, I know you've been in many, many, many hardware projects. Is there anything that particularly stands out as being a really successful project? And were there some key learning points from that project that made it so successful?
I don't. I always find those difficult to answer because I think anything you do is very circumstantial. So you put the best deal or service or arrangement in place based on the circumstances you're in at that particular point in time. Um, and it also depends on who you're dealing with as well. So if you're dealing one of the large IT companies, then your wiggle room might be a lot less than if you're dealing with someone smaller. So I don't know. I couldn't really think of anything which really stood out in terms of you know we don't yeah, we don't really have that many problems in terms of the services we have. So I suppose that's and if we do have a problem, we tend to get them fixed. So we've got reasonable relationships at the moment.
Mm.
So yeah, I don't really know how to answer that question because
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think if I judge something like I did, I might say this is the best deal I ever did. But
yeah,
if I had to do it today, would I do it differently? Probably because the circumstances are different.
yeah, yeah.
And I
This could
think
be,
that's the way you've got to think of things is that you can always do better, but often you'll never get a perfect solution because you're dealing with what's the constraints that you're working
yeah,
within.
yeah,
And those constraints will change from time to time.
yeah, yeah. I think there possibly is another way of thinking about it, Phil, for your credit, is that because your processes are so well managed, they're robust, you have a lot of engagement and interaction um, with multiple layers of different departments. The reason why you don't have any problems is because of those things. And therefore, you're already doing the very things that make these projects successful. So, I think there's another way of, reflecting on this. It's the fact you don't get those issues is because you're doing all the right things to mitigate those risks right from day one.
Yeah, we do get issues, but we've we've got relationships where we can resolve them very reasonably quickly.
Yeah,
And the
yeah,
business, I think, again, the business needs to working with the business. They understand, so they, they know that these sort of some problems may take a week to fix.
yeah,
But if they know that, what they don't like is when they say, "Oh, when is it going to be fixed?" And you go, "Oh, it's going to be at least a week."
mm,
They're going to go, "Oh, why? You wish we knew that." Well, okay. Whereas if they know that,
yeah,
often they'll say, "Oh, that's all right. Yeah, okay, yeah, we expect," because it's setting their expectations
mm, mm,
and agreeing an expectation with them. So you don't get this sort of, they because with IT sometimes they think everything can be fixed just like that, and it can't. Sometimes things do take a little
yeah,
time. But if you can engage with them and sort of like say, okay, in reality, you can have this or this SLA, or you can have this SLA or this SLA. This one's going to cost you £1 million. This one's going to cost you £500,000. This one's going to cost you 100,000. But this one it'll take a few hours. This one will take a day. This one will take a week. which do you want?
Hmm.
And then they have to start thinking about, oh, is it worth the but once you've agreed that, they understand. So when it kicks in, they already know what the SLA is, what the likely turnaround is. Normally, you can hopefully they're going to be beaten, but it's not a surprise to them. If it's going to take a day to fix, then that's it takes a day.
Yeah.
And if somebody's complaining it's not good enough, then obviously if the senior team understand that, they've made a decision as well that they're happy to invest that amount of money in that level of service, then it just takes away some of those pains that you have with people complaining about things because they didn't know about it. If they know about it, then they'll still complain, but less.
Okay. Well, Phil, I know we're very close to our time now. Thank you very much for this session. I found our discussion today very informative.
Good.
If anybody is perhaps new into purchasing IT equipment, hardware and software is listening in, have you got any suggested resources or techniques or thoughts on how to help them on their journey to become a professional or even a more professional purchaser?
I definitely recommend doing SIPs because my experience of SIPs was there's certain modules, they certainly really start to make you think about the process that you follow, and it is very simple. It's not rocket science. It's just common. It's just the application of common sense. I mean, there's certain of the modules I thought were a bit, but if you can get past those, I think it's really good. And also, what I did find really useful, I don't know how they're going to run it in COVID times, but because you're with a group of like-minded people, you had discussions around particular topics, particular challenges, particular modules as a group, and those discussions help sort of make you think about um, just think about how different people have different challenges within their business and how they approach them differently. So it's quite good to have that sharing of information as well. But I think my advice is always that it's like it's listen to the people who you work with, engage with them, because working with you, Dave, you have a different approach to me, but I, I learned a lot from that because that's what it's about, isn't it? It's about I can't do everything. I don't do everything right, but it's sort of like seeing how other people do things and finding people you can talk to and have good conversations around and challenge them and they can challenge you. And then you learn, you sort of like say, oh yeah, there's a different approach to that. We can think about it doing in a slightly different way while keeping that sort of like thread of, it's the appliance of common sense, but the approaches to it. If you got talk to people and say, if you were doing this, how would you do that? And nick their ideas. Basically it.
Brilliant, mate. Well, thanks very much for this session, and I'm sure we'll be in contact with each other soon. And equally, I do hope you, the listeners, have found these discussions useful, have given you some thoughts on preparing for and undertaking your next IT hardware purchase. If you have any specific ideas, suggestions, comments, or requests for future episodes, please feel free to email me at reallifebuyer@gmail.com. It'd be most appreciated if you could give positive feedback on this podcast and subscribe. In the meantime, I look forward to you joining me, the Real Life Buyer, on our next episode. And remember, save money and buy smart. Thanks very much, everybody. Thanks, Phil. Take care.